They should have been like, as soon as the person isn't looking, they should have had him just absolutely hauling ass to be spooky around the next tree, or have like a bicycle or something.
Calling an Uber. The spooky movies, they are starting to come out in more abundance now, the closer we get to October. And we're going to talk about one of those new movies today, the newest Friday the 13th. It's not a Friday the 13th movie, but I could have been confused that it was. We're going to talk about In a Violent Nature today. But before we do that, I am your host, Rob Coakley, joined as always by Dave Wilkins.
Hello, Rob Coakley.
And Jesse Wilkins.
Hello, Rob Coakley.
And we just want to make sure we notate this at the beginning of the show. This is a newer movie. It's only been out for like a month or so between theaters and VOD and all that fun stuff. It'll be on Shudder soon. We are going to spoil this movie. So if you want to see this movie, go watch it. Leave this video running on mute. Don't listen to it, but give us the view. Give us the view time. And go watch the movie. Come back. Watch this again. Give us 2 views on this. And let us know what you think in the comments of it. Before we jump into this, though, as always, the very undrunk Dave will give us a synopsis for this movie.
I wouldn't rule it out.
I am completely undrunk. I feel like you saying that implies that I am. It is not true. In a Violent Nature, 2024, directed by Chris Nash. When a group of teens takes a locket from a collapsed fire tower in the woods, they unwittingly resurrect the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime. The undead killer soon embarks on a bloody rampage to retrieve the stolen locket, methodically slaughtering anyone who gets in his way.
Wow, I'm actually shocked that you were able to get through that. Have another one, Dave. All right.
So this movie, I went into it completely blind, and I immediately figured out what it was because they didn't hide it. It was nothing. It was very obvious. And what I will say, because this does definitely fit into the category of every slasher from the 80s, mostly Friday the 13th. You get a little bit of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was not 80s, but a little bit of that. I kind of get Texas Chainsaw vibes from the killer itself. But this movie, I think, was unique. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know of a lot of, if any, slasher movies where they profiled the slasher the entire time, where there's basically pretty much you're getting everything from the perspective of the killer the entire movie. So you have
you got a little bit of that in, I think, 2018 Halloween, but it wasn't the whole movie, obviously, but you had a full few minutes at least of them actually following him through the house and seeing the decisions that he was making. You see him, I think, walk up to, I think it was, did I say Halloween or did I say Friday the 13th? It was a Halloween movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Where he walks up to a baby's crib, chooses not to kill the baby, which is nice, and continues to move through the house and then does his thing. But you got a little bit of that. And honestly, when I saw this, I was like, they got that idea from that exact scene. That was just kind of the vibe I got. Who knows? But yeah, a full movie. No, I haven't seen one like this.
Yeah, that was kind of my point, though.
They did a found footage, and I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, of following the slasher in a found footage style.
Mm-hmm.
So they did it in that respect. There's a few, like you could say that Creep is sort of like that.
Yeah,
as well, but nothing in this in like a retro slasher style is what I will say.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I thought was pretty cool and unique about it, because it hits a lot of the slasher tropes, which is fine because it kind of felt like a throwback to 80s slashers. Felt like that's kind of what they were doing. And I think that for that, you can excuse some of the bad acting, some of the bad character dialogue, and the lack of character development in this movie. I don't think, whereas you could take away for those things in most movies, I think the fact that this was kind of a throwback to 80s slashers, I feel like you can kind of excuse some of it.
Behind the Mask is the movie that I couldn't think of, by the way. So that's the found footage slasher movie. I agree. I think that I thought this was an interesting concept. on paper, but I made the Friday the 13th joke at the beginning. This is 90% Friday the 13th, like complete knockoff. Like I guarantee the elevator pitch for this was, what if we do Friday the 13th, but we follow Jason? Is exactly what this was, because they're in the campground. The killer very much has a very Jason-esque walk. Like,
Yeah, he's got his little hut, he's a mama's boy, another one of those. So you have obviously that whole storyline. A lot of this had to do with it. Yeah. So the whole idea of following the killer around for the entire movie sounds cool on paper. And then when you get a movie like this, where it seems like they're milking extra time by just having him walk through the woods for way too much in this movie, it kind of loses you a little bit. So it's an experimental film, kind of like Skinamarink was, kind of like a couple of these other Blair Witch Project. Like they're trying new things. Some of them worked. Blair Witch did. Skinamarink, in my opinion, did not. This one kind of.
Skinamarink, in everybody's opinion, did not. Just so you know,
and everyone who's being honest,
every single person who watched Skinamarink did not like it. 100% of them. That's a fact.
So I respect that they tried something new, and there was enough in this movie where I could say that it was enjoyable. But there was, for one, there was no music in this movie outside of the music that was being played by the characters, at their campsite or whatever. There's no score, and you just hear the sound of crunching grass for 90% of this movie. It's a little much, but they're trying something new.
Yeah, I want to preface the rest of what I say in this review as I actually did enjoy this movie, but I have a lot of negatives on it that I'm going to bring up. So it's going to sound like I hated this movie. You'll see with my score that I didn't actually like hate it or anything like that. I had fun watching this movie. Like this movie was I found this to be a fun watch, but the budget was low, obviously. Clearly, we've brought up what they were going for. Jesse, that point about him walking becomes very monotonous. And as I was watching it, the thing that I kept thinking of is this is like a loading screen for a PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2 game where they give you control of the character and you're just like running in a room until you get to the next scene or the next level. Like you're doing a loading screen to get to the next scene in the movie, right? Like it's just like, got to get to the next set piece. Let's follow the killer to the next set piece. And that's just what I found it akin to while I was watching this movie. I'm just like, oh, we're just loading until we get to the next scene.
I'll tell you what, with those, they kind of blew it, right? Because in those, like every slasher movie, you have a scene where the character inexplicably is in the next place, right? And you're like, what does he have, a motorcycle off screen? They should have done something like that. They should have been like, as soon as the person isn't looking, they should have had him just absolutely hauling ass to be spooky around the next tree, or have like a bicycle or something.
Calling an Uber.
Just to freak them out in the next location.
That's a great idea for like a spoof slasher movie.
Yeah.
That'd be really funny.
He just has a moped or something.
Pitch it to the Wayans brothers.
Yep.
So I'm just going to continue off that point of him walking real quick because it goes into one of my biggest like cringe things in this movie. The ADR was terrible in this movie. Like just the voiceover on a lot of these scenes as he's coming up. It's like, I understand that you need to hear the characters, but it's not what he would hear from the distance that he was a lot of the times. So it didn't play well. It just like the audio sounded way off more than it should have. And it really kind of took me out of some of those scenes. And then they do the close up and it only sounds a little bit louder. And you're like, it's not even like it was just really bad.
Yeah. And add to that, they were, I don't know if it was a direction thing where I don't know how they recorded it, but the character dialogue in those scenes sounded so clunky and forced.
Yeah.
And it was just, I don't know whether it was really bad voice acting or the director was like, we're just going to go in and just record this in the studio. Whereas they maybe could have just actually sat them around a campfire and had them had a conversation and record it. that would have sounded better to me, but it just felt so like soap opera and just
Yeah.
phony in the dialogue. I don't know. It could have been bad writing. It could have been bad acting. It could have been bad direction. I don't know, but whatever it was, it did not work.
Well, what you brought up was like this is like a love letter to 80s slashers for the most part. And I think they went a little too heavy with that, where you still want to modernize it a little bit, right? You don't want to go, I mean, they did even like the film aspect was like from an 80s. You went back to your 4:3
Aspect ratio, yeah.
Yeah, the aspect ratio and everything. So I wonder if that was the direction, like we're gonna do it like ADR sounded in the 1980s. And it's like you don't need to do it that way. You can still make the movie sound fine. The 80s ones, it was the 80s. It was
Mhm.
you had limitations. I guarantee you, if I gave Jesse all the audio for this movie and I was like, make this conversation sound like it was 300 feet away, he would nail it.
Mhm. I
And
think so. Yeah.
yeah, and
Hire me
so-
for your next slasher movie. Come on.
but my point being is Jesse sucks at audio and anyone can do it. No, I'm just saying like you could have done it properly, and I'm sure your sound guys could have made this sound better, but I think you're right, Dave. I think this was a forced direction, and I think it's a miss.
Yeah,
I think it's a big miss. I think it takes you out of scenes a little bit too much.
yeah, because for me, if I'm noticing it, that means I've been taken out of it. Because
Yeah.
now I'm thinking about why it sounds bad and why they did it like that when they could have done it a different way and made it sound better, instead of paying attention to what they're saying and losing myself in the movie.
Which is a little bit also like Skinamarink, because when you watch Skinamarink, you're like, they did everything poorly.
Well, and I just don't think you need to, when you're paying homage to something, you can still modernize it. I know I've already said that point, but I just kind of want to beat that in, that you can still do your love letters, but just update it. Just make it more enjoyable to watch. When I'm sitting there, I'm not going, oh dude, the ADR so bad. This is so 80s. It's awesome. I'm like, no, the ADR sucks on this scene. It's taking me out of it because I hate the way that the sound is on this particular scene right now.
And it didn't sound like the 80s, because if it sounded like the 80s, I would have been like, I wouldn't noticed it, because it would have just felt like an 80s slasher. And then, but the fact that I noticed, I was like, that sounds bad.
Yeah. So
it was very different, and I'm just crying watching the movie because how many of these scenes could have been better with music. But I respect the decision not to do it. I don't know. It's, again, when I watch a movie like this, I'm thinking like they're trying a lot of things differently, and let's see how I feel at the end of it before I pass judgment. But the whole time, I think it's the inner musician in me that's like, this would have been really cool if you did some of this, I don't know. But another thing that I liked about this was, because you had the perspective of the killer, you got to see the killer obtain his mask and decide to put it on, which is a little bit different than a lot of other slashers, where they just either already have a mask on, or they just kind of halfway through the movie found a mask or something. But this one, you kind of got a little bit more explanation on it, or you got to see it develop a little bit.
I think we should just jump into what you have to talk about with this movie, and that is the kills. And then we can talk about some other stuff. But I want to start, because there's a main kill on this, and I don't even want to start with that one yet. I want to start with the one he does to the guy where he takes his head off and then he drags his body to the building. I think like the kill was fun, right? Like I thought that was a really fun kill. Then they set up one of the greatest shots in the movie and ruin it. It's the scene where he has the body and the head on the floor in the building. And he's walking in and you see his shadow on the floor. It's a really cool looking shot. The problem is they have the face like looking in the direction of the camera, almost like where you can see the face of the decapitated head. And it's awful. Like the prop is terrible. It needed to be not shown. Like you need to not see it. It ruins the shot. It ruined the whole shot. It was the best shot in the movie. Like it was framed perfectly. Everything looked really cool. That one thing, all you need to do was like turn it on its side so you saw the back of the head or something, and you would have been much better off. And unfortunately, it just kept drawing my attention. I'm just like, I can't stop looking at this stupid prop that looks like, I made it out of paper mache last night on my own.
Yeah.
and you ruin the shot. But then he takes the body and throws it into the glass to open it, and I laughed out loud.
That was great. I thought that was fantastic. I think that I agree with you with the shot of the head just looked weird because I think it's because they had it positioned so perfectly on the floor, just like perfectly straight upright, staring at the camera. It's like that's how it was thrown through a window. It should have been like laying on its side, battered and scratched up from going through the glass or something. It just looked fake, like it was just like stuck there intentionally.
Yeah.
So I agree.
Good.
Cool kill though.
It was fun. Like the scene itself was fun, and the body hitting the glass, I couldn't stop laughing at it. All right,
what I did like about that was how they set it up too. And they set it up so that his character was going out to go meet up with some girls that he had met at the gas station. So it kind of gave them an excuse not to be alarmed right away when he doesn't come back. So I thought that was a good setup.
That was smart of them to do that. All right, let's jump into the next two kills. That one of them is the one that everyone talks about, but I want to talk about the lake kill first because they did something, and I'm like, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. I just want you to do. So he goes into the water. Another problem with this movie we can talk about after if you want, but when they he's in view of them always, and no one ever sees him.
He's on the other side of the lake.
He's in eyesight.
No, he is, of course. So that it's not implausible that they could see him. It's also not implausible that they wouldn't see him. He's on the opposite side of the lake. They're on a dock. They're having a conversation, and they're not paying attention to things that are going on. So I thought this scene was really cool and unique. So now we've established that this guy is supernatural, right? There's no ambiguity. You're like, is he supernatural? Is he just a crazed killer? So there's no question. We already know that this guy is something otherworldly. So when he walks into the water, he just slowly walks in and submerges into the water towards the girls on the dock, and he disappears completely into the water. And I thought that was really eerie because as the conversation goes on, he's getting closer and closer, very slowly, very methodically, and very deliberately. So it just builds so much tension. And then one of the girls walks away, leaving the other girl just swimming. And there's this great moment of suspense where she's just swimming back and forth, and you're just waiting for what you know is going to happen. And I love the way that this is like basically a cutaway kill. And you just see her just go yelp and just get sucked down into the water.
Yeah. And I love that. What I didn't like was her coming back up. I was like, I actually started saying out loud, I'm like, don't let her come back up. Don't let her come back up. Don't let her come back up. I just wanted her to disappear and be done. They had to put in that little fight moment where she comes back to the thing. I'm like, it's not the worst. It's not terrible. And I understand and I can see it for some people. I just wanted it to be different. I just wanted her to go down and be gone because you never see that.
I liked it because of the tension, right? So this whole scene was all tension. And this is a movie where it's very gore heavy for the kills, at least. I mean, it's not a super gory movie. The kills are very graphic, but they're spaced out and there aren't a ton of them. So, but when the ones where they get killed on scene, they're very graphic and very brutal. And this one was a little bit of a break from that, and it was more based on the tension of you don't see the killer, but you know that he's going there. You see her get pulled down, you know she's probably done, and then there's just like a few seconds where you're just looking at the water, wondering what's going to happen. Is she going to come up? Is you're going to see a bloody corpse? You're going to see blood rise up in the water like in Jaws, and then it's almost like a little jump scare, but it didn't feel cheap where she popped out of the water, yelped again, and gets sucked right back down. And I thought it just added to the tension that was already being built in that scene. I thought this was a great scene. One of the best scenes in the movie, in my opinion.
And again, I didn't hate it. I was looking for that different edge because you see that in so many movies when they get sucked into the water that they come back up fighting. And then whatever happens. I just wanted it to be quick and different, but I was
kind of hoping that there would just be different body parts would start floating up or something. That would have been cool. But I think it would have taken away from this was the one kill where you don't see it. It's off screen, and the whole thing, rather than based on shock, it's based on tension. And I think that would have muddled it.
That's fair. I can see that. I can say that that's fine. I get it. Again, I get it.
Yeah.
I was looking for something different, but then we do get something different.
Yeah.
Boy, do we get something different as he afterwards walks up the pathway to find the friend that went to do yoga. And Dave, I'll let you take it from here and explain this scene.
Okay. I don't know how detailed I'm going to get into the graphics of the scene, but what I will say is you think you've seen everything in a slasher movie because there's so many slashers. There's 1,000 Friday the 13th movies. There's a million Texas Chainsaw movies, so there's like they always try and outdo themselves and get more creative with the kills. So it's like, what else after the Hostel movies and the Turistas movies? And it's like, what else could they possibly throw at us, 40 years into the slasher genre? And they did it. They shocked me. Let's just say that I'm not gonna even explain it. Go watch this movie if you want to see one of the most unique and disturbing, shocking, gory, brutal kills in cinematic slasher history. Because this was like, holy shit! And it started out was like, okay, and then it just kept on progressing to like, what is going on? And she ended up a pretzel.
It was something out of Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, it was like a Mortal Kombat. It really, great point. That it really was like a Mortal Kombat fatality.
It's all I could think as I was watching it.
And no CGI. It was all practical effects. And it was,
they really did that to a girl.
It was real. They did it. Well, it's crazy. And thank God they didn't try and do that CGI, because that would have been most likely with a $4.2 million. No, it's not what the budget. That was the box office. I don't know what the budget was, but it was low and probably wouldn't have looked good with CGI.
Yeah, you couldn't have pulled that off with CGI, so I'm glad they did it that way. There's a few more kills, and again, if you're into that stuff, go out of your way to at least see that kill, because it is something you've never seen before. Let's talk about the park ranger real quick, because I don't know, man. This felt a little forced to me, this one.
Yeah, we got your classic exposition dump.
Yeah.
And he was so like aggressive. I think he was possibly not a good actor, but or maybe it was the way that his character was written, because we got a glimpse of him in the opening scene where you didn't actually see his character, but you heard him, and he's just freaking out, and you get it. He's tense because you find out that he's always just so tense and so angry because he knows the deal. He was part of the reason that. Not that the problem started, but that the problem was temporarily solved. So he's very high tension, very anxious type of guy.
Yeah, and you just got to go back and live there, right? After that, how do you not just get the hell out of there? I don't care if you have $5 to your name. You're like, you know what? This place is not for me. I cannot be here. You don't stay there to guard the place. Like, no, you did your job once. So you let someone else know and take off.
Yeah. And if you're going to stick around to do your job, do it better.
Yeah, do it better.
Put up a sign.
Yeah.
Put up a sign that says the things that you're waiting around to tell people.
Yeah.
And then go. It's no longer your fault. It's okay. Yeah. This isn't on you.
So he ends up like getting his neck broken, and then the killer just does too much. Like this scene like took me out of it a little bit, like, because the thought process behind what they wanted to do was pretty cool, right? They wanted to do like the log splitter kill, but to get there just feels so forced for like a supernatural killer, right? Everything that Jason ever does makes sense because it's right there. He's not like MacGyvering kills, right? Like, and that's sort of what happens here. It's like he breaks his neck, and instead of just finishing the job, he's like, oh, there's a log splitter in there. Let me go start that. Let me get a chain. Let me drag him in there. Let me make sure it works by cutting his hand off first. And then like, it's too much. It's too much for a slasher killer like this. Visually, I understand it's cool and everything like that, but you should have had him break his neck next to it, not outside, right? Like he ran in there and you went and got him. We didn't have to see him get dragged in there. Like, it's just,
it could have worked in a different movie. Like this was, it didn't feel like a slasher kill, which I think is the point you were making. It felt more like a gore porn kill, like a Hostel type movie where you have more of like a serial killer who is he wants his victim to experience the most pain possible, where he snapped his spine so that the guy could be conscious and sentient for the kill, which seems like it just didn't really feel like it fit this character who was just brutally killing people in the fastest possible way.
Right.
So
Yeah, I completely agree.
the scene wasn't a bad scene. It just might not have fit. It didn't fit in this movie. And it was like 8 minutes long. It was like,
It was real long.
It's really dark.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I was thinking like I could really go for some more walking footage at this point.
And let's go to the last kill that also made me laugh out loud. I was just like, so I have a note here. My note is LMAOOOO what in capital letters for this kill, because they're trying to taunt him into some trap that we have no idea what they're trying. It's like involves a gas can, and they're trying to lure him over. And all of a sudden, the guy just appears behind him. He's like, "I'm right here," and he just takes his axe and just fucking mangles him.
Yeah.
Like, what was your plan here, dude? Like,
So the plan was they had the gas can and they were going to burn him, but they had to do it at the site of the fire tower, which is where he was originally buried, and where they had to return him to, and to return the locket to reverse the curse. So they had to get him there, and they didn't know how to do that unless they chased him. So he sent the girl with the gas can and the lighter to the tower, and he was going to lure him, probably assuming this guy's super slow and it'll be easy to just lure him there. Ridiculously, he gets right behind him and's like, "Hey, you son of a bitch!" And then, of course, the guy just turns around and immediately kills him within it's actually a funny scene, because you get him funny scene, it's a slasher, but he's just hacking this guy's face with the axe, and then you'd see the other girl just standing in the background like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Like, you can give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, it did not work out to plan. I legitimately started laughing. It killed me. So
Yeah, I don't think they stuck the landing on this movie. But before we get to the end of this movie, I want to talk about how incredibly stupid the killer looked with that mask on.
yes,
It was not scary. It was
No.
very goofy. So you contrast this with Jason's mask, the hockey mask, scary. Even Jason with the mask before he had the hockey mask, he had like the sack on his head. That was creepy. Leatherface masks made out of a face, horrifying. This one, nope, not it. This looked really stupid. He looked like one of the minions.
something out of SpongeBob.
Even the mask from My Bloody Valentine looks better than this one.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's more akin to what they're going for here, where it's like an actual firefighter's mask from 60 years ago or whatever.
Lager mask, right?
I think it was like a lager firefighter's mask or some shit. Like,
yeah, maybe
they were bringing up, and and then the miner's mask is My Bloody Valentine, so that's why I'm kind of going back and forth. But it did not look scary at all.
It didn't look scary. I felt like with this mask decision, they were going for something that stood out and maybe was a little more, could be iconic if this movie was successful. So I felt like that was kind of the look that they were giving, because it's not a mask that a lot of people have seen before. I haven't really seen one like it. It looked kind of like a scuba diving helmet, but it definitely wasn't a helmet. So kind of had that look. So it was unique, but it was extremely goofy.
Yeah, it was like a burlap sack that you'd wear on your head if you were going deep sea diving,
which is very recommended. Yeah. If you like waterboarding yourself, that's a great first step.
Yeah, I agree. I was not a huge fan of the mask, and the inevitable sequel, which I don't think they should do a sequel to this movie. They will, because it's going to make enough money and it has enough buzz.
Yeah, it did fine. It's 81 on Rotten Tomatoes, 6 out of 10 IMDb.
I don't think we need a sequel with them following the killer this way again.
Right? I do wonder if they do a sequel, if they'll get a little bit away from it. You got to think with the sequel, they're going to have a bigger budget. They can do more things. It just, again, I'll go back to it. I feel like there was so much walking footage because they were trying to hit that 90-minute mark, and they just had to eat up time. So I do wonder if there was some other things that they cut out and they're like, all right, let's do some more walking.
Yeah, it's a good point on the runtime too, because it was like I think it was 93 minutes total, and it felt like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, it
It
did
just
feel
felt.
long.
I was like, dude, how the fuck is this movie not over? And it's not even like I wasn't enjoying it. I was just like, I kept looking at the clock, being like, what is going on? Like, I thought this was 90 minutes, but I think it's because there was so much walking that it's just like kind of
Yeah.
dragged the movie out a little bit. Like, this was like, why 90 minute? Like, why is that what it has to be? Like, why can't you make a 50-minute movie? Like, I would watch that. I think that'd be awesome, especially for a show. Because the problem with horrors, if they're too long, it takes you out of it, and then it's not scary anymore. Less the case with slashers than with paranormal stuff. But why do you have to have that 90-minute? Why?
I used to know the answer to this. I think it has something to do with like labeling and stuff. It does. I don't think it's 90 minutes, but I think there's a certain runtime in order to be considered for stuff.
It's got to have something to do with the theaters, right? You're not going to go to a theater and buy a bunch of popcorn and drinks and stuff to sit down for 45 minutes, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I wonder if theaters would shy away from a movie if it doesn't have at least like an hour 20 runtime.
yeah, it would be cool to have like a horror theater or a theater do like horror nights where they just do short horrors. You could catch like 3 features in one, I think
bet
that'd
they
be
do.
fun. I'm sure that, well, I mean, there aren't, you don't ever see a 30-minute horror movie is what I'm saying.
It's good.
But maybe if they did do things like that, you could.
Yeah, sort of like a grindhouse thing from back in the day. Do
Yeah,
like
but
a
even like, yeah,
do like a
true.
double feature of 2-hour-long movies, or like 3, I guess, maybe, if you really wanted to.
Mhm.
Would be pretty cool.
But the ending,
Yeah.
again, I don't think they stuck the landing on this. I thought that it ended pretty poorly overall, right from the last kill scene being just silly to the girl's fever dream, which I actually didn't even really hate. It wasn't a dream, but she was running and she kind of has like a panic attack moment where she just hears the chopping of her friend, it just reverberating in her head as she runs through the woods and then falls and breaks her leg. But and then the ending was super stretched out for no reason.
So stretched out.
For nothing. And it's like I'm fine with I don't need the trope of the killer showing up last minute or whatever. I don't need that. But, and again, obviously, spoiler alert, obviously. But for that long drawn out car ride where she gets picked up by the woman, it almost felt like it was going to be a Texas Chainsaw type ending. And they're driving down the road and you're just waiting for it, right? Maybe this was their point, but just to have it be nothing.
It was too long.
She told her a story for the boringest story of all time for 4 to 6 minutes or something like that, and then the movie kind of just ended, and it was like that almost feels lazy.
I thought the car ride was 3 hours.
It was so bad.
And I'm like, they're getting nowhere. Where is this hospital? Please find it, because I hate this.
It was actually so long that when they pulled over, I was like, if he pops out of the woods, it's going to be stupid. They were just driving for 10 minutes. There's no possible way this slow. It would have been stupid. So it's.
The good thing is what they didn't do is have the car break down at that point, and then you get an extra 3.5 hours of him having to catch up to the car by more walking footage. That's actually what the second movie is going to be: is him catching up to the car.
Him getting to the car. And the third movie is when he finally approaches it.
Yeah.
I think we kind of hit on everything that we needed to hit on, unless somebody else has something here.
No, this was it had pros and cons. It wasn't so. I mean, I'll say right away, this movie was better than half of the Friday the 13th movies, at least. So it wasn't. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It had flaws, but I think 81% on Rotten Tomatoes is very high. Very high. I would give this, if we're going to get into ratings, I have this at 3.4.
That's interesting. I have it at 3.2 non-scary masks out of 5. So that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, I got it at a 3.1. If there was music, a little less walking footage, a little more effort in on the ending, then it'd be a little bit higher for me. But I respect what they're doing here much more than I respect the people who made Skinamarink, where they're trying to do something new. But at least it was watchable. That's a big step up from Skinamarink.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we were kind of trashing this movie a little bit, but I had fun with it. I legitimately laughed at a few points. Kills were fun.
Yeah,
it just, to your point, we could have shaved some time off of this and it would have been better. And my biggest knock, I just want to say it one more time, is it just felt like we were walking to the next scene.
Mhm.
instead of there being a cohesive story,
Yeah.
right? Which is the problem with following the killer. So it felt like we're just trying to hit scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, scene 5,
Yeah,
and
that's true.
then be done. So I don't think you could do that again. I think you have to give a little bit more of a cohesive story. And I understand that becomes more from the perspective of the people that he's going after, but you
You
can't do this again. This was fine for this one. You just can't do it again.
It kind of was, and your point about it being just from scene to scene, next kill to next kill is pretty good. The problem with profiling the killer for the entire time is it doesn't leave you any room to develop your characters. And we've said it before: if you don't develop your characters, the kills are meaningless. And this it kind of felt like that because there wasn't a single character I was like, ah, shit, that sucks.
Yeah.
It was just, oh yeah, I was like, who's that?
Yeah,
The
you
end.
have no idea who they are.
Yeah, there's 30 minutes left of the movie, and then one character gets killed, and I'm like, was this guy even in the movie? Like, who?
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't work. There's a reason that it's never been done before. It's because it don't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't always mean it's a great idea, but I respect it. Let us know what you think. Have you seen this movie? What did you think? Would you like to see the second movie do the same thing that the first movie did? Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, share with your friends. Let us know.
As Jesse said, let us know in the comments. That's going to do it for this horror movie review. We will catch you next time. Peace.